Hello, good evening and welcome to The Review. I'm Nadim Majid. Next week, the long-awaited National Export Strategy will be launched. I have here with me the document that is to be launched on the 19th of July. It covers numerous sectors, from boat building, electronics and electrical components, to IT, spices and concentrates, processed foods and beverages, wellness tourism, a whole host of emerging export industries in Sri Lanka. How will the National Export Strategy help Sri Lanka's export performance? What will be the challenges in implementing the proposals contained in this document? To talk about this and more, we're joined by the chairperson of the Export Development Board, the lead agency in developing the National Export Strategy, Ms. Indira Malwatta. Ms. Malwatta, thank you very much for taking the time off to come here and speak to us. I'm sure it must be a busy few days ahead of the launch. How will this National Export Strategy improve Sri Lanka's export performance?
In comparison to our figures of performance in the last 10 to 12 years, Sri Lanka has been lagging behind in exports, and this we thought is the opportune time in our country that we give a boost to the export industry. And in this case also, what we thought is that we have to look at new innovative products. How do we give a kickstart to startups in Sri Lanka, and how do we help the SME exporters of Sri Lanka? So this was the background on which we started developing the National Export Strategy for our country.
What was the logic behind picking these specific industries? For example, you have boat building. Electronic and electrical components has been around for a little while. Information technology also been around for a while. Processed food and beverages, spices and concentrates, wellness tourism. What was the logic behind picking these specific industries?
Yeah, we looked at to see how the international markets are and to see how our supply base in Sri Lanka was. Now, if you look at the international market, it's very rarely that somebody produces something from A to Z. It's a global value chain that you have to plug into. So now, for example, if you take the electronic and electrical products that we are looking at here, we are looking at Sri Lanka maybe assembling something in Sri Lanka, or maybe doing a component. We take again the example of automobile industry. I think it will take us a little time if we try to do the full manufacture of the automobile in Sri Lanka. So here, taking advantage of the rubber industry in Sri Lanka and the engineering capabilities of our young graduates, what we thought was, if we do some components and then be able to export these components to automobile giants, that will turn out to be a big export industry for Sri Lanka. So similarly, we have also looked at the boat and shipbuilding industry. We have about 250 yachts which sails around Sri Lanka, and we have lost that opportunity. So if we develop the industry in Sri Lanka and again have be in a position to have marinas in Sri Lanka, and
that's the question, isn't it? It's going to require, for example, boat building,
yes,
to give Sri Lanka what you call in trade economics a comparative advantage, or an advantage of some sort, is going to require major infrastructure development. You'll have to be putting marinas all on the coast to make use of those 250 ships, yachts, cruise liners that are going around the country. Is there an environment in which you foresee this happening over the next few years?
Yeah, we looked at the shipbuilding industry, and in fact I think we are very happy that in the last budget itself, even prior to launching of the National Export Strategy, we've been able to get money allocated for setting up of a launching pad down south. And because up to that point, most of the ships and the yachts that were built had to take a very difficult journey to get to the launching pad, and as a result, we were limited in manufacturing large yachts and boats in Sri Lanka because of this distance that they had to come from land to a launching pad. And with this launching pad, what we have done is we will have a number of places where they could assemble it near the launching pad. So they make the components, bring it to the launching pad, put it together there and launch it from we have looked at Waligama for this. It's a lot of work in the sense there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be done. There's a lot of coordination between a number of government agencies, because the land belongs to one, the coast conservation comes in, wildlife, fisheries. So we have managed to put all these organizations together, and they have realized the value that if we work as a team, that we could make it for our country. And I must say, we have got excellent cooperation from all these government organizations together with the private sector. We've just started working on getting the launching pad done. Then again, for the yacht industry, to attract yachts to Sri Lanka, there is a boat regulatory framework which has to be done afresh, because the regulatory framework that has been current in Sri Lanka is very archaic. So for that, we have also got, we won't be able to do it within the consultancies available in Sri Lanka. We are getting a foreign consultancy firm to come and look at the framework of Sri Lanka. So that will permit foreign yachts to come and berth in Sri Lanka, giving them the permission. And we have worked it out that when a yacht comes and berths, they spend at least 3 nights in a country. And it's not only the berthing, but they also get them, the yachts are serviced here, they go for shopping, they go for some tourism, so it adds value to our tourism industry too. So nautical tourism can develop a lot in addition to the boat and yachts to be exported. Now in the boats and yachts, we are targeting the African market, because we have the market for utility star boats, which means things for the fisheries sector, for ferrying people across, where we have the necessary standards, we have the quality, and we have identified the market there.
When you look at these industries, again, they're all emerging industries, and I assume that major infrastructure development will be required to really help these industries sort of kickstart, or to give them a boost to be able to compete on the world stage. How big of a factor is infrastructure development in the national export strategy?
In certain sectors it is, but you take the food and the spice concentrates. Now Sri Lanka in a case had its cinnamon and pepper, which are internationally famous, but the majority of it was going in basic raw form. So here what we are doing is we are concentrating on flavors and essences, for example, to serve the perfumery industry or the confectionery industry. Now that needs more R&D than the infrastructure itself. So there what you require is being able to help people to undertake the research and development that is necessary to go into new products. So there is no physical infrastructure as such. It is a knowledge-based industry that will be needed for such an industry.
There will be major human resource development.
Yes, and which again, there is it's not only the product sectors that we are supporting in the NES. If you see, we are also going in for entrepreneurship, innovation, logistics, trade information. So it's a combination where it will cut across all sectors. So we are actively promoting entrepreneurship and innovation.
On that note, we'll go in for a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll take a look at how the NES, the National Export Strategy, ties in with the government's vision for 2025. Welcome back to the program. We're in conversation with Ms. Indira Malwata, chairperson of the Export Development Board, ahead of the launch of the National Export Strategy of Sri Lanka. Now, last year, the government launched the Vision 2025 document, outlining their plans for Sri Lanka's economic development up to 2025. How does this, the National Export Strategy, tie in with that?
I think this dovetails beautifully to it, because the Vision 2025 is talking of a blue-green economy, making use of our oceans and the biodiversity and the green of our country. So when it comes to exports, we too are a part of the Vision 2025. So I think it's at the same time that we all started planning it. So we took very much into consideration the overall plan of the government. So I see no differences between where we would have anything conflicting between it, because we are
so it complements each other.
It complements each other.
Sri Lanka successive governments and bureaucracies have been well noted for planning and strategizing, but the trick is in the implementation, and unfortunately it is in implementation that we have consistently been found wanting. How are things going to be different this time around? How are you going to approach implementation differently to how we have approached it so far?
Yeah, I think the difference here is we took a whole of government approach, where the export development plan is not that of the Sri Lanka export development. This is a national plan for our country. So it is not that the EDB alone can do it. So we had major consultations with a large number of stakeholders, both government, private sector chambers, associations. I think we have consulted over 750 people from the north to the south, east to the west, because we wanted everyone to be a part of this, so that it is private sector driven. The government will be there to facilitate. So we have confidence that when it's private sector driven, that irrespective of any changes, that this is a document, a living document that can be implemented. And we also saw to it that in addition to having the strategy, we also had the plans of action drawn up in it, and we have identified the lead agencies who should undertake some of the activity and the supporting agencies. So we have brought it, I think, very crystal clear as to who should implement it, who should take responsibility, and I think the whole of government and the private sector is taking responsibility for this national export strategy.
One of the major factions that sort of function as detractors to this government's, at least, policies when it comes to trade is professional associations like the Government Medical Officers Association. Then there are groups like the Professionals National Front. Were they among the 750 people who were consulted?
Oh, for sure. Anyone who was engaged in any industry. Now, for example, professional services is a sector that we will be promoting, because that will get promoted through the ICT BPM sector. So I think from architects to engineers to everyone possible, we have had consultations, we have had core groups, and it's not just one consultation. We have debated for hours, and it's with everyone's consent that we have put the plan of action within this strategy.
So you see no reason why the GMOA should threaten a strike action, because it's flu season.
Yeah.
I really don't.
No, I wouldn't see any protest, because for everyone, exports is important. It is a pillar for our development of our country, and I think everyone together must help in this drive, help in the drive of exports, because one time it was said, either you export or perish, and I think it still stands for our country. Being a small country of about 21-22 million population, the market within is limited, and for economies of scale, it is extremely important that we have to look outwards, and only looking inwards, we'll never be able to get our country going. So we have to have an outward looking economy, which is there currently, and we need to support it. And you have to look at the growing markets. You look at Asia, you look at, just take China, India, and the number of the middle class who are there, and the number of products and services we can promote within those countries. And as I said, the number of studies we have done, we know we have a competitive advantage in certain services and certain products. So it is the identification of the correct product, matching it to the market, and facilitating our exporters in order to do it. The government need not be involved in exports, just facilitate the exporters, make it conducive for them to be able to invest, to expand their products and services, and make a good environment so that every exporter has the confidence to export.
Naturally, as the export sector grows, so it also promotes job creation, generates more meaningful employment, let's say. Is that also feature in this national export
We took that into consideration because the government has a target of 1 million jobs. So we have taken that into consideration. That was not one of the key factors, but certainly taken into consideration, because one sector that gets promoted here is the SME sector, and we are also looking at promoting a new group of exporters so that it gets diversified. And we have also commenced 2000 exporter program, where we are selecting entrepreneurs who have done well in the local market, where we have identified that their products or services, there's a potential to export, and we are giving them a special helping hand for them to get to the export market. So when such industries develop, obviously they will want more people to be employed. And we have not stopped at that. We are also working with tertiary education ministry, because we have identified the skill sets that will be needed for the export market. And when you look at the new skills that are needed, there are more engineers, more in technical education, more IT savvy young people. So all this will make it very conducive, especially for the young people of Sri Lanka, to be able to be engaged in the export industry.
It's also going to require some major investment in education infrastructure as well. On that note, we're going for another short commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about the challenges in implementing the national export strategy. Welcome back to the program. We're in conversation with Ms. Indira Malwatta, the chairperson of the Export Development Board. We're talking about the national export strategy, which is to be launched next week. Ms. Malwatta, as we highlighted throughout the show as well, implementation is going to be the trick. What are the challenges, the key challenges that you envision when it comes to implementing this? Because we know that, for example, many experts have pointed out that over the years, the problems for one of the key issues that Sri Lanka has had to deal with is bureaucratic lethargy. Is that a problem this time around as well? Do you envision this being a challenge going forward?
Not a challenge at all. As I said, we consulted all the relevant ministries and departments. So it has not been drawn up just by one organization. We have taken everybody into planning this. And as I said before, when we identified the plans of action, we have a lead implementing organization. That could very well be a ministry or another department. And they are all very keen that they submit budget proposals based on these plans that have been drawn up. So it is very clearly identified what is the kind of assistance that we will need from government, what is the investment we will need from the private sector. So I feel I'm very comfortable that we will be able to implement. And one thing I always said at the start was, when our staff got to this thing and we said, let's do the national export strategy for our country, I always said this cannot be something that is on a shelf, that it has to be an implementable action plan, and therefore this is why the actions have been drawn up, responsibility given. We have consulted ministries, we have sat with the secretaries, we have discussed with them, and all of them are very, very enthusiastic to put up these plans. And in fact, we also have set up a national NES management team, which is done for the first time. They will look at the actions in the NES, and NES is the National Export Strategy. They will look at all the actions in that, talk to the relevant ministries, the chambers, the private sector, and say, look here, we are supposed to do this. Have we got our plans together? Are we submitting budget proposals? Are we submitting for donor assistance? So all that has been worked out. So I feel if everybody is totally committed, which I think we have all worked as a very good team for our country. So I'm very confident.
What are the accountability mechanisms that you put in place through here to ensure that this is being implemented? For example, each of the individual agencies that are assigned various tasks, do they have to report on various milestones? Is there a reporting mechanism that's in place to ensure that implementation happens?
Yes, we have two mechanisms. One is we have formed something called the advisory committees. That consists of the relevant private sector private sector exporters, entrepreneurs, as well as the chambers and the relevant government department. For example, if I talk to you about the gems and jewelry sector, we have this advisory committee, and that advisory committee consists of the National Gem and Jewelry Authority, the Import Control Department, Exchange Control, and the Gem and Jewelry Traders Association, the leading exporters, people from the mining areas. So it consists of about 15 to 20 members. So the ownership is theirs, so they own it, and we have shared with them again the action plans. So if they want certain things achieved, the private sector has to drive all of us, all the government sector officials. Let's get these things done, and it has quarterly plans, it has monthly plans, and we also have the national, as I said, the NES management team, who will help the advisory committees, work along with the advisory committees to see that if there is any proposal to be done for donor funding, if there are any proposals to be done for the budget, that those proposals are done and followed up.
One of the major challenges that not many people like to talk about that much, but is a reality that that policymakers have to contend with, is political stability. If you take, for example, in the health sector, the Senaka Bibile policies shuttled around between governments for several years, and finally we had national health policy, well, at least in terms of pharmaceuticals, drugs and medicines. Given the current political climate in the country, there is a degree of political uncertainty, and there are elections, a series of elections that are coming up that could change the priorities of those in government. Are you concerned that a change in government could lead to the premature demise of the NES?
Irrespective of any changes, as I said, exports is key to our country. So irrespective of any changes, I'm fairly confident that the way this NES has been drawn up, as I said, in consultation with everybody across the spectrum, that they will continue to adopt it. And we have given the onus to the private sector. So there may be changes, say, in government, but the private sector still continues. So the private sector will drive it through, because the plans are all there, and it is the responsibility of our private sector to take it through with whatever changes that may be, and exports is critical to the country. So I don't see a major issue in it.
You're not afraid that, for example, the next government might prioritize different industries within the private sector?
I think we have given adequate information and done adequate research on the selection of the products. It is both quantitative and qualitative research that we have done. I mean, we have just not picked something from somewhere because somebody told us that this is the sector that should be selected. We have done over 8 months of studies with World Bank, with the ADB, with Harvard, with so many people. We have done so many studies, and our own exporters we have discussed. And the selection of the product sectors to be focused sectors was also done in consultation with a 2-day workshop we had with over 1,000 exporters, potential exporters, and we gave them the opportunity. We gave them only the research work that has been done and compiled, and we said, now based on all this, you all pick what you think is good for our country. So this is why I said there's a lot of ownership.
It came through a
real participatory mechanism, and so many stakeholders are consulted.
One final question before we wrap up. I understand that the EDB has been collaborating closely with the International Trade Center in developing the NES as well. What will be the role of the International Trade Center moving forward?
Yeah, I must say I must also thank the EU, because it was with EU funding that we did it along with the International Trade Center. So International Trade Center and the Export Development Board has for many years been working very closely. In fact, so much so that the Executive Director, Mrs. Arancha Gonzalez herself, was wanting to be present at the launch. And we have also, together with the assistants, we are also having a donor meeting on the day of the launch, because we want to meet all the prospective donors in Sri Lanka and explain to them what the NES is, so that they could pick up certain things from this NES. So the ITC will be guiding us right throughout on till we get ourselves very firmly
set to go.
Firmly set to go.
Thank you very much, Ms. Malwatha, for coming on the program and for giving us a brief rundown of the National Export Strategy. Of course, following the launch, the document will be publicly available.
Yes.
For the public to view as well. So I suppose, since most of the work has been done and it's going to be in the implementation, all you can really do now is pray that politics doesn't get in the way of prosperity. Thank you very much, Ms. Malwatha. That's our show for this evening. I'll see you again, same time, same place next week. Good night and good luck.